How do you learn who you really are? It's not found in books. It's found on the battlefield. All right, what's up, warriors? Welcome back to the battlefield of the mind. All right, today I've got Judge Anthony J. Mohr. He is the author of a book called Every Other Weekend, which is the coming of age with two different dads. And I'm excited to have you here. Now, some people have no idea who you are, and some people still have no idea who I am. So why don't you tell the people who you are?
Great. Thank you for having me on the show. And who I am. Really, I'm just a retired Superior Court judge in Los Angeles, but I still sit part-time, what we call on assignment, which is delightful because I'm doing a lot of work that I never did when I was on full-time because my background was civil law. And so I usually sat in a civil assignment, but now I'm doing criminal, mental health, as well as civil. And it's a calling. I feel it's a great way to give back. It's a great way to see how people behave, try to resolve disputes, do some justice between parties. Keeps me happy. Retirement is good.
I like it. Now, you still say you're doing battles right now in the different fights. And of course, I'm in the mental health world. I'd love to hear some of the fights that are the most important to you right now. What's the big passion fights that you're doing at the moment?
Well, the passion fight is you want to do the right thing for somebody who shows up in your court. And it's not easy. I'm not a psychologist like you are. I'm not a psychiatrist. But judges are tasked with the responsibility of determining if somebody is competent to stand trial. We're tasked with the responsibility of whether somebody should be under or continue with a conservatorship. And it's hard to say. I've had several cases where you really don't know. I just hope what I'm doing is right because God forbid I'm wrong. I'm ruining lives. But, we try. I will say this, the majority of the cases, you know what to do. They're not difficult. But when you get those close cases, that's when you sweat.
What are some of the things that you found when doing something like this, when making what is right choices, especially with mental health or families and things like this, where the who is right is so loud? How do you find discernment? I'm like, man, this is the way I figured that out. It's a tricky one.
It's hard. I mean, many times you wish you had a jury trial, but you don't have jury trials in family law. And by the way, I've never sat in family law. My own parents were divorced, as I wrote about in my book, and it was traumatic, and I just didn't want to sit through that day after day with other families. But in mental health, there are some situations where you get jury trials, and but most situations you yourself make the decision. And as I said, it's not easy. You listen to the people, you try to figure out who's telling the truth. Many times a person wants to leave the state hospital or wants to go home. If they're under a conservatorship, they might say, look, I want to go home. My brother will take care of me. But then my brother, quote unquote, is not in court. So how do you know if they're telling the truth? If the relative shows up in court and says, yes, I want to take care of this person, that will lean me toward, usually, not always, but usually toward releasing the person into their care. But what happens if the person is really, has some mental problems? The brother is not trained in therapy. He loves, he loves the sibling, but he's not qualified. How do you handle that? I'm not one here to give you the full answer on that. It's just something you have to kind of hope you're doing the right thing.
That's a difficult job to have. That's a really hard job to have because you want to do what is right, and it's such a subjective universe. It's hard to say what is right and what's not right when, well, there's a lot of people who want what they want, and you don't know if that's good or bad. It's very tricky to have.
How sorry we would be if our wishes were granted.
Oh, my God. You're so right.
Yeah.
I want to lean into your book a little bit. Tell me
Sure.
about the book and, why did you write this book? What was the thing in your heart that needed to be put on paper?
Yeah, I was encouraged to write. I never thought about writing it, and I was busy practicing law, but an old family friend, my parents' age, was a literary agent and encouraged me to write it. He said, look, your father was a well-known actor. Your stepfather was well-known in business. He built the machinery that in Boston imprinted the Bank Americard, which is now Visa. So you've got some mainstream personalities in your family, and they're very different. Write about it. And I've always liked to write. I was on my school paper in high school and college and a little bit in law school, but I was too busy being a lawyer, so I didn't do it. Then I become a judge. And again, the agent reaches out, write the book, and I'm too busy being a judge. Then, but I started to write some personal essays, and a few of them got published in small literary journals, and that felt good. And then COVID came along, and everything gets shut down. And I thought, well, maybe I should work with this. And I began to kind of flesh out the essays and find some, some other essays that would tie them together. And the book began to take shape. And I worked with an editor who kind of a beta reader, if you will, who helped me put it together. And I finished the book. It was really a 2-year journey, not including the time I wrote several of the essays, which are in the book. And it got picked up by a small press, which was fine. I wasn't looking for a big 5. And it came out, and it's been a delight. It's been a great ride.
What is one of your favorite lessons that you have from this book? Because you've got 2 different father type mentors, 2 very different things. You got an actor, you got a businessman, then you became a lawyer and a judge. These are 3 very different paths. What is some of your favorite lessons from the book that you like to share?
Well, I guess the big lesson takeaway, among others, was, both of the fathers had a lot of faults. They really did. My own father was kind of a Peter Pan, if you will. He wanted his freedom, which is one reason he got divorced. The other reason is he met a woman in Sweden, fell in love with her, and left my mother for her. But, and then Stan, my stepfather, was this hard-bitten disciplinarian who once said, quote, "Children shouldn't have that much fun," end quote. Line I'll never forget. And I remember seeing those faults. I lit them up in the book. But as I wrote, I began to realize these are 2 people doing their very best. They both loved me. No doubt about that. They both wanted the best for me. No doubt about that. They tried their best. They were trying to do the right thing. Whether or not they did, hard to tell. Many times they did. There were other times they were very wrong. But I realized I got a little more sympathy for them because they were trying to be, as appropriate and as helpful as they possibly could. The other thing I began to realize is my mother, who I really did not want to write about in the book, but she kept popping up. She kept kind of showing up in a number of the chapters. She was the glue that kept everything together, and she was the one who ran interference for me. When my father had affairs and tried to draw me into them, she was able to put the brakes on that. When Stan decided I should be working and not having fun or not doing high school activities, she ran interference and said, no, the kid's enjoying high school. Let him be on the debate squad. Let him spend his weekends with friends or at a debate tournament or writing editorials for the paper. This is what he likes. He's good at it. Let him do it. So those are a couple of major takeaways. And then the last one, which may be the most important if you want to give advice to people, is if you're parents and you have kids and you're planning to get a divorce, get the kid into therapy. I don't care if the kid appears to be doing great, running around with a smile on his face, he's still cracking jokes, still having fun with his friends, doesn't matter. Get the kid into therapy because a divorce is a monstrous event and it will have lasting effects, which you may not know about, or at least not know for years.
Right. Kids have to survive. And a lot of times when people are going through massive loss, you're not paying attention to the well-being of others.
Correct.
Yeah. It's a really tricky thing there for the mom thing, too. That also creates a whole new set of things. You got the Peter Pan dad, you got the hardcore strict dad, but then you got the mom who's always trying to get between, which is also a very difficult dynamic for a young man trying to understand leadership.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Warrior, thank you so much for being a part of the information that we have. And you're part of our story as we are a part of yours. It's very much an honor to be able to connect with each other. If you want to know more or you want to get started with working with me or working with our warriors so that you can begin your path to authenticity, strength, leadership, and accountability, this is the way. Together, we are way stronger. Now you get to choose. Do you go forward or keep doing what you've always done? If you stay where you're at, hey, click on some of the stuff and follow what it is. We got motivational stuff. We've got podcasts. We've got more things. Just subscribe and do the stuff, and we'll keep you updated. But if you want to start going in, start jumping into what our programs offer and start your journey and being the hero in your own story.
It is. But I was very grateful for it. I didn't
I'm
consider
sure.
myself a quote unquote leader, although I did become editor in chief of the paper. We had 2 co-editors, and I wasn't the best leader in the world. I mean, I think I did a decent job, and I did things with the paper I wanted to do. But I don't think I was the best editor in chief that ever hit that school. And when I got to, pardon me?
Well, it's ironic when it comes to leadership, especially because I train men, globally, I train men. We're all pack leaders of our home or our people around us. Like, we have to be the safe person. We have to be the one who leads. Like, I got you guys. I'll take care of it. And so in a leadership, as you as a leader of the home, like, that is a leadership role. And so it's kind of tricky when you see the other leaders have a wall between child and father. It's tricky to know, like, well, how am I supposed to do that if somebody's trying to protect me from whatever mentorship that would be, or whether those men are even doing leadership themselves, if mom's even trying to get between. It's a very tricky blueprint to break down.
So true. I had one good high school friend. Unfortunately, he died about a month ago. But in his home, the mother was the leader. The father was kind of the milquetoast guy. But the mother was the one who really kept it together.
How did that affect him, especially when it comes to being like, because a lot of these times today, the ladies who want power or leading are really doing more revealing of themselves. And there's a lot more harm being done than good, especially towards males. And this is a problem.
Well, I didn't know the mother that well. She wasn't, when I was over there with friends or at parties, she was not present. I met her maybe twice. So what I know about her is what my friend told me. But he was in a crowd of kids who actually did extremely well. My high school friends succeeded phenomenally. One became dean of an Ivy League law school. One worked for the attorney general of the state, very successful in business, very connected politically. Another one became an extremely successful financial advisor. I could go on. There were a couple of others. But Jack didn't hit that summit. He ended up becoming a travel agent. He was a very good one, but he got very depressed and then ended up working for the TSA. You'd find him on the airport screening lines. And finally he retired. And he always said to me, excuse me, he always said, I haven't hit the level that the rest of my crowd did.
I think there's something happening. If you listen, there's something happening when I say, well, what is successful? And each of these is a job. Yep. Is job successful?
Depends on who you talk to. I've got one cousin who's exceptionally wealthy, runs a very big beer distribution company back east. And, for him, being an entrepreneur is the success. When he talks about somebody who's hired, he says, oh, he's a job guy. That's his phrase. He's just a job guy.
Yeah.
And is job successful? I don't know. My friend was very successful in terms of raising his child, having a wonderful relationship with a woman after his first divorce. And in that area, he was a wild success.
If that's the case, how does somebody who's so successful in all your categories fall into depression?
Good question. I don't know. I should turn that around and ask you. I just don't know.
This is where I see. I'll give you an analogy that I use very often.
Sure.
This is how I see people try to understand things. So I have a saying called "the answers are not the solutions." Like, the answers are not the solution. So, do you know what this is?
A Rubik's Cube or something like that?
This is a Rubik's Cube. And this is a solved one. That's the answer.
Yeah.
All the colors on each side are the same. They're all matched up. That's the answer, right? And I'm like, okay, do it.
It's not helpful unless you show your work.
Well, do it. Go ahead and now do yours. Make yours do it. And people will be doing it. They're spinning their cube and spinning their cube, and they're not doing it. And then you see somebody go, holy shit, I got the greens. Mm-hmm. I got the greens. The money is good. I got money. Money's good, man. I'm like, that's really cool, man. Turn your cube. No, 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 no. I'm successful. I am the dean. I am the lawyer. I am the businessman. I got money. I'm like, how's your faith? How's your relationships? How's your health? How's your other categories doing here? Let's start looking at the rest of your cube here. And they'll have one side done. Now, here's where I see people really get screwed up. Do you know how to solve the cube? And can you solve it without turning the greens off?
I never played with those. I don't know. You're reminding me of a guy. I don't know if you know who Phil Lader is. He was ambassador to England under Clinton. And
No.
he and his wife started the Renaissance Weekend, which is a wonderful event. It's like an intellectual carnival. And on the last night, Phil always says, you're all very high achieving people. This is an invitation only event. We've got people here who are Nobel Prize winners, astronauts, former ambassadors, you name it. And he says, we have a lot of balls to keep in the air, and we're constantly, juggling the balls. Most of those balls are made of rubber. If they hit the ground, they'll bounce back. But 2 or 3 are made of glass. And if you miss and they hit the ground, they're ruined. And those might be your family, your children, your relationship. And the question becomes, how do you handle the balls in the air and remembering which are rubber and which are precious crystal?
And this is where it gets tricky. And this is where I'm seeing the people who are juggling which ones and which one's a priority. And the issue is they all are. And this is where you see people who are very one-sided. There's a balance between doing and being. And I think that's where people get goofed up is there's a lot of human doings, which is look at my success of my job, my job, my job, my job, my job. And I'm like, well, how is the being element, whether it be spirit side or heart side, like how are your relationships? How's your faith? How's your connections? How's your purpose? You're like, oh, I do work. I'm a worker. And I'm like, but what about your calling or who you are or your connections? Like, what about what about these parts? No, I'm doing. And I see people one-sided, and then you start getting more complex like the Rubik's Cube. And I'm like, it's health, wealth, love, happiness, mind, heart, body, spirit. Like, how are you doing in all of your categories here? Yeah. And you're going, I got wealth. And I'm like, and the worst thing that I see happen is if you have somebody who has maybe 2 sides or 3 sides done. Because that means there's 3 sides undone. And that means they're afraid to turn the cube at all.
But it's better than only one side.
Well, it's still the same outcome. Is you'll look like you have 3 sides done, but it's not solved, which means I can't turn any side without knocking off a side that's complete. Yeah. And so they're stuck. They can't turn the cube at all because they're afraid of making any mistakes. And they have to turn it off in order to switch the cube around. The reason I bring up this analogy is because people will get stuck in 3 sides. And how can someone who's got a loving wife and a successful career and more money than he knows what to do with, and his kid is doing great, and he's in depression? I'm like, because his other sides aren't okay. Maybe it's a health thing or a faith thing or some other side is not okay. He's not taking care of himself, or he's not connected to something worth more than himself, and he's just doing these things.
Yeah.
And this is what I notice with guys. There's a lot of advice out here to try to tell people how to do, not how to be, and it's off balance. And people don't know how to balance these out to be like able to do both at the same time. And the reality is it's not a teeter-totter. It's a giant disc. And so how do I make micro adjustments instead of running back and forth and trying to do massive adjustments, and the whole thing just keeps tilting back and forth? And that's why people struggle. Is so on the outside looking into the untrained eye, someone with wealth or title or success by these standards may look like there's no reason to struggle or suffer or feel bad. But I have very, very, very successful clients who are like, my doing side is crushing it, and my being side is absolutely depressed.
You know the poem by, I think it's Edward Arlington Robinson, Mr. Corey?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you gotta. I could pull it up right now, but it's basically Simon and Garfunkel turned it into a song. This wonderful guy he's rich. He was a gentleman from soul to crown, and we all took our hats off to him. And then one day, Richard Corey went home and put a bullet through his head.
It's the same thing. I see it more than ever, like these days, where you'll see people put up a front or put up some sort of a mask or some sort of persona of success, or their identity is routed in their job. But what happens, and this is probably, something where you could identify with too, is you were the judge. And now you're like, I don't do that anymore. Well, when you say, hi, Tony, good to meet you. What's the first question guys ask guys?
And what do you do?
What do you do? Human doing. What do you do? And you're identified by that. And it's very difficult when you have a predominant or successful thing, and then you don't do that anymore.
Well, the way I handle it is simply say I'm retired. I was a Superior Court judge.
Yeah, I
You can say
was.
that, and that'll get the aha response that kind of strokes the ego.
Yes. But then it's like, well, who are you?
Yeah.
Well, that's different than what was I?
Yeah.
And this is where people goof up. They're like, oh, I don't know how to answer that. I'm like, give me a heart side answer. Give me a spirit side answer. Give me something that's more balanced than just money or status.
Right.
Like,
there
that's a harder question.
I haven't seen them in many years. They lived in Washington. And they said that the best parties they would ever go to would be the ones where you'd meet people and you could spend 10 minutes with them in good animated conversation and never learn their occupation.
Yes. Human doings and human beings. We're not taught to be anymore. And that's why I'm very interested to see these points of view that you have, because I could see in the stories, you've got the actor dad, the business dad, the lawyer of self. And I'm like, well, where is the lessons to be and balance? And where is this part where, like, you can see you can use these lessons to apply to the bigger picture? Let's solve the cube. Let's solve it. Let's not just get the one or two sides. I want to take all these perspectives and start putting them together. And so what are the biggest takeaways from your Peter Pan dad? And what are the biggest takeaways from the dad who said, you shouldn't be smiling. It's work, 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 work. But I think Rihanna made a song about it.
Well, I'm not sure I set up the cube perfectly in the book.
What would be a life lesson that if you could say, hey, kids, check this out, because I wish I would have knew this when I was younger? And what would be the thing that you would share? Like, this is the wisdom I want to give.
Try anything once. You may love building model airplanes, but try something else. Limit your model airplane building to twice a week. Now go out and try something else, be it baseball or, raising squid, whatever you want to do, setting up a worm farm, learning ballet or whatever comes into your mind, give it a try, because that's the time to do it. You won't do it when you're 50, 60, 70 years old. Most of us won't.
Yeah.
I've tried. I was on a cruise actually 2 months ago, and the boat, it was kind of like a summer camp. During the days you're at sea, they set up all sorts of activities, ranging from pickleball to needlepoint. And I took a class in ballet. Now, I'm a visual you don't need in ballet, but I had a ball. I had a great time with it. It was fun.
Try new things.
Yeah, exactly.
You see people all the time make up excuses. I watch today's youth has got instant gratification society. It's a very difficult thing to overcome, is because whenever you try something new, are you just good at it the first try?
No, of course not.
Well, instant gratification society says if I'm just not an expert on the first try, I should never try to do it again.
You got to fight that. Back in April, I decided to take 3 days and go to a class, a one-on-one tutorial in ceramics. And again, I know nothing of ceramics, but I just did it. My wife was off with her girlfriends for a few days, and I decided I'm going to get out of town and do something wacky. And I took the class. It was up in Sonoma County. I had a great time. What I made is, garbage, 3 pieces of crap. But who cares? I wasn't trying to be the best ceramicist in the world. I was just having some fun with clay. It's almost like being a child again and playing with clay back in nursery school.
Are you saying that you weren't attached to the results and more attached to the effort and experience?
Yeah. The experience was the message, not the results.
Isn't it just about winning and losing?
No. It was just fun. It was just enjoyable.
I think a lot of times today we're pushed into behaviors, and I'd like to be able to see, because you've been around enough human behavior that you're starting to see patterns of change. And in your lifetime, I'm sure you see the things that walk in the door start to become something very different. And there's different problems that start coming up and emerging more commonly. If you had to say, I've noticed some major changes in the people that come before me, what are some things that you would notice and give advice for? I want that dad advice that you got. Like, hey, I'm seeing this thing happen, and guys, let me have your back to watch out for it.
Good question. Obviously, I wasn't a judge when I was a kid, but I'm sure now we see a lot more drugs than we saw back then. Back then, marijuana was the worst of the worst, and there was heroin, but very, very few people used it. Now, marijuana is, walk down the street and you're going to smell it, and you have a lot of cases where people are driving under the influence of marijuana. They're under the influence of, I don't know, meth, cocaine, heroin. A lot of associates in law firms about 30 years ago were doing cocaine so they could stay up late and bill more hours. And I've seen that. The other thing I've seen, and I'm sure this went on when I was a kid, I don't think this is new, domestic violence. I was lucky. I mean, I didn't see it except for that one incident I write about in the book where Stan got physical with me. But my father never was. I think he spanked, but that was about it. Everybody spanked when in the 50s. That was just.
What are you seeing is you mean domestic violence? Like, because you mentioned like the dad disciplining the child. Are you talking about like spouses or children?
I'm
what do you
talking
mean?
about all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I never heard of one spouse hitting another when I was a kid. It may have gone on, but it was behind the doors. The police said, "Oh, it's just no big deal. He's just slapping her around to show her who's boss. That kind of thing." Well, now, you don't do those kind of things. It's considered, a crime, which, it should be. It should be. But we see a lot of it. I've had a lot of cases where spouses hit each other, mostly men hitting women. But I remember the very first case I tried as a lawyer in a criminal context was a domestic violence case where the woman was hitting the man, and the jury convicted her.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that. I work on the men's side.
Yeah.
And if you look at the numbers, just the way it crossed now, women hit men 3 times more than men hit women.
Wow, I didn't know.
But men don't report it.
Yeah.
It's shameful. Like a guy getting beat up by a girl, A, people don't seem to have empathy or care. And then B, it's almost shameful to report that I got beat up by a girl. And so most men, I've even seen it in my front yard. I saw a girl just bashing this guy with like these items, just hitting this dude who's way bigger than her. And I get out there, I break this whole situation up, and she's compulsively lying to the police. I call the cops on this. I'm like, this is shenanigans. But this dude could have just demolished her, and she's hitting him with weapons and stuff. He's all bashed up and cut up and bruised up. And he's just trying to do the right thing. He wasn't doing anything violent. She was. And it's one of these things where I'm watching these women are attacking men, but they don't press charges. He's like, I'm not going to press charges. I'm not going to press charges. It's more common than you would think that guys don't press charges. And it's extremely common that I watch, and I have to help my guys to do good man stuff, not nice guy stuff, where I see these nice guys defending women's poor behavior. But women do not defend men's poor behavior at all. Not anymore, at least. Back maybe in the 60s they did, but they don't anymore. And so now I see guys being abused a lot more than women. And it's definitely not reported the same way at all.
I'm sure you've seen Carousel, the movie or the play, the musical.
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay. I want you to rent the movie Carousel. It's a musical by Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Mm-hmm.
And it broke me up. I've seen it 2 or 3 times, and each time I just weep. The movie justifies, quote unquote, domestic violence. The play does as well, because at one point, Billy Bigelow, who's a barker on a carousel, I don't want to give you the whole giveaway, but he dies committing a crime. And he comes back, and before he dies, we learn that he was hitting Julie Jordan, who's his wife. And then when he comes back, he strikes his daughter, and the daughter runs to the mother and says, he hit me, and she doesn't know who he is. It's a stranger who showed up, clearly Billy's ghost. But he hits her, and she says, he hit me, but Mommy, it didn't hurt. Is it possible for some guy to hit you hard and it not hurt at all? And she says, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. As I speak, I want to cry.
Yeah, that's great. It's heavy to hold on to.
You must see it.
Yeah, I'll watch it.
It's Rogers and Hammerstein tapped into human emotion more brilliantly than almost anybody else I can think of.
Yeah. It's an interesting world we're in for these things. We're in an interesting time right now. And it's a shift where we're going into what would be or could be, or is it possible to move towards more of an equal mindset with each other? Not equality. We can't do a 50-50 thing, but more like fairness. It's going to be a little more fair in the way that we interact with each other. But there's something happening right now. And I think you being a judge, I know you weren't part of the family side, and I just see more of that part, more commonly in my field, working with the dads who are like, I'm trying to protect my children, and they seem like they have an uphill battle in the court. This domestic violence thing, I see the side, and I'm in the deep end of the pool, just so you know. I'm in the side where it's like the deep depressions. I'm in the addictions. I'm in the unaliving thoughts. I'm in the deep end. I play in the not fun zone. And I can see what happens when you give people power without consequence. I can see when the court system is going to work in your favor because playing the victim will make it so Anthony is going to go with me even though I'm the abuser.
Yeah.
By
the way, Rick, I have seen family law, quote unquote, cases in criminal law, in civil law, in mental health law. It spills over. It's not limited to the quote unquote family departments. We see it. I had one where two deaf people who were married got into a fight, and one sued the other for assault and battery. The jury basically said a pox on both your houses, which to me was the right result given the case. But they were both unlikable people, and neither I think was telling the truth. The jury did it. The jury got it right, but it was a couple who just couldn't get along, and they got violent with each other. And you see it in criminal all the time.
Yeah, and they try to play you and create your authority to make it so that somebody will have to pay a price for not being able to communicate or win a fight even.
Sure.
And this is a very interesting behavior. And I'm just seeing this now, and this is why I like to hear your side on this, is like I'm seeing people try to use you to hurt other people. And it's a very messed up game. I'll use an authority to do as much harm to somebody under the flag of love or relationship as I possibly can do damage to. And that puts you in a very difficult spot. What an unfair scenario.
Rick, if they're lying, and they're a good enough liar, the fact that the governor gave me a black robe doesn't mean I'm a better judge of human behavior.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that at all. You try. You see a lot of cases, so you try to use your best intuition and your best experience. But I'm sure I've gotten it wrong. I don't care if it's a traffic case where the guy says the light was green or I wasn't speeding, or a domestic violence case. If someone, points his finger and says j'accuse, and, it's not true, but the jury buys it or the judge buys it, it's a life ruined. I can't imagine anything worse than knowing you're right, but a judge or a jury says no, and I'm going to punish you for it.
This is a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. Who do you think would be the one? Because like, what if the judge is just absolutely wrong? Like, what happens? Because I see false accusations commonly. Mm-hmm. And like, you see people just make up a false charge. And then like, especially because I work on the men's side, you see a good man lied about, and then his children stripped away from him from the person who will destroy somebody with a lie. Now they're stuck with the kids. And
Rick, do you remember that? I think it was a lacrosse player at Duke University.
It was the whole team, wasn't it?
Something. I don't recall.
I remember the team.
Charged, and turned out that it was a complete fabrication.
Yeah, it was the Duke lacrosse team. It was a girl she accused the team of raping her. They drugged her and raped her. And then later on, it was years of these guys. They were kicked out of school. Their lives were ruined. They were fired from their jobs. They were pariahs in the community. They were all branded Candyman and rapists. They're all bad guys, just for later on for her to go like, oh, I made the whole thing up. How many lives were completely like just ruined in those 3-4 years? And then also, what's even more messed up is how many people didn't hear that she made it all up, and they still think that these guys are that guy. That to me, that destroys lives. That's just like, why wouldn't that be in the same category? Why wouldn't that behavior of a false accusation be in the same category as a rape or something like that? That charge that she made up kicked them out of school, destroyed their reputations, and annihilated their chances to have a regular life. What do you think that does to these boys?
It destroys their spirit. I know of a case back in my old grammar school where a woman accused one of the students, a girl accused one of the guys of, I think it was, I wasn't there, I was told about it by a good friend, where she accused him of writing poison pen letters or something like that. And the guy was suspended and lost the last semester of his 8th grade. But right at the end, and the administration wanted to turn it over to the police. It was very, very serious. Right at the end, they found out it was somebody else. Because whoever it was, I guess, sent her another poison pen letter or something. And of course, the school apologizes, oh, you're welcome back in the class. But the damage is done. The poor kid, I'm sure to this day is not over it. Maybe he is, but certainly for the next couple of years, he wasn't.
I would love to hear your opinion on these things, because it's life-changing for these. You as a judge, what do you think? Because the morality of it's so complicated to go like, well, what should you do if somebody is with full, absolute intention to do maximum harm with reputation demolition or lying? What do you think the consequence should be with someone who wants to destroy people?
It should be serious. And there should be more prosecutions for perjury if, in fact, you can prove it was perjurious. Yeah. I had a case. It had nothing to do with domestic violence. It had to do with medical malpractice. But there was a witness who claimed she had a PhD. She didn't. And we had a Perry Mason moment in court when the registrar of the school showed up and basically said, all of these theses that she wrote were for a bachelor's degree, not a PhD. We don't grant PhDs. And it was clear as day that she had lied through her teeth. Well, I sent the whole transcript to the district attorney's office and I said, prosecute this. They never did. I was upset about that.
This is an interesting thing because you guys are the line for what is right. That's the line. Like the judge is like, what is the right thing to do? And you have to do a very difficult system of like weighing out like what's the best thing to do here. Yeah. But what do you do when people are doing just
hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead.
I'm making notes the entire time.
You gave me a thought which I put down.
That's good. I make notes the whole time we're talking, so we're good. And so what is right is such an interesting thing, especially as you as the last line of defense. And then you go, we have to do what is right. And then it seems to not be important anymore. That's got to be very frustrating as you being like, we're the ones that do this.
Yeah.
People rely on us. And then where's the accountability to we're not even doing our part for morality? Yeah. There's got to be some sort of order here. Now, I don't know what happens beyond that. I don't know.
I wish I did. It's a very imperfect system, Rick. It's very imperfect. And if people ignore the oath, then forget it. It's all over the map. Anything can happen. You're hoping when somebody says, I swear to tell the truth, that they will be telling the God's honest truth. And a lot of testimony is perjurious. We know that. I heard one judge say a third of the testimony she hears in court is not true.
Easily.
That's frightening.
I would probably say it's more, especially if you're working with domestic cases. Whenever I work with any couples, there's always omittance. Yeah. there's always some element of stretching and removal of accountability. The truth is very commonly my truth. And that's where it's very difficult. In the high discernment, I am very good at seeing through the bullshit because that's my job.
Yeah.
And so, like, I catch the ones. There's a lot of dark triad behavior that does not like me. There's a lot of people.
I tried a case in front of a judge, a guy named Ed Rafidi. He's not around anymore. He was a great old guy, very gruff. He used to be a carny. Okay, he knew bullshit when he heard it, and he was good in the trial. It was a jury trial, so they made the decisions. But Judge Rafidi knew what he was doing, and as I said, he knew mendacity and the undeniable odor of mendacity when he heard it.
If you've been around it enough, you can see it very quickly. And this is a tough thing. It's almost like you have to have like that show, like Lie to Me. You have to have like a micro expression human behavior expert in the room going like, Judge, that was a lie. Judge, that was a lie. He's not telling the truth. There's something else happening here. You're like, got it. It'd be nice to have that, but I definitely
I have to work late tonight.
Yeah, right. I'll come help out. I catch them very quickly, and people don't know necessarily what's happening because they don't know what to look for. Things like narcissist and psychopathy, Machiavellianism.
One of the best things to do, cross-examination was a judge, I forget who, very well-known judge, said it's the best engine for discovering the truth. Because one of the things you'll do in cross-ex is draw out the details. Darling, I was at the office last night. Oh, how long were you there? What kind of a project were you working on? Who was there with you? Were you all alone? Oh, was your secretary there? Were you trying to write a report? You go on and on like that. You remember what your secretary was wearing. I was with my buddies at the bar. Oh, were they playing music? Remember any of the songs? Who was there? Name some of your buddies. Was it John or Pete or Frank or, whoever? And, you take them out of the box where they are. And if they start hesitating, and their eyes go up like this and they're looking for an answer, the chances are fairly good that they're, engaging in fabulism. Yep.
And you can catch, I find intention very quickly. Like, what is the reason you're doing that? What does that mean to you? I'm like, there's a thing happening in here you're doing. And as soon as I start catching there's a rabbit trail of something, they know when you're onto them. They know they're very in tune with, this one's not falling for it. Yeah. And it's a tricky thing. It's a tough thing. I will say, just so people can know, anybody listening to this, everyone's being classified or diagnosed narcissist today. Everybody. And it's not everybody. It's a very small percentage of people who are actually doing this behavior. But I meet people commonly who are like, yeah, everybody keeps calling me a narcissist. No, it's really funny. Here's how you can tell, Tony. If you have anybody who you're not sure, just have them talk to me. Because narcissists hate me more than anything. Oh my God, do they hate me. Within minutes, they hate me.
You read The Culture of Narcissism by Christopher Lasch?
I haven't read that one, no. I've read a lot.
It came out around 1977 or so. It was pretty good.
Does it get into today's culture?
Sorry?
Does it get into today's culture with what's going on with social media? Because holy shit.
It's pre-social media. But
let
me ask you a question.
Sure.
Because I never quite get it. Narcissism to me is like this kind of quicksilver concept that's really hard to really pin down. How would you define a narcissist? What is it?
It's there's a lot of complicated versions of it. Let me just give you the very big red flags to really watch out for. Okay. Narcissists need certain things. Number one is control, and they will control by any means necessary. They usually can express a fantasy of grandeur. If you're with me, I'll give you everything. And with that, anything that goes against that, they need to remove. So any support system, any structure, anything that has anything that would go against my narrative needs to be removed and demonized. And so if your family, let's say you have a brother who always keeps it real with you, and then you start hanging out with this person who's like, I'm going to give you the world. I'm going to be the best for you. We're going to have the most beautiful life. And your brother's like, hey, man, that's a weird behavior. And she's like, she just wants you to be unhappy. He just wants you to be unhappy. Get rid of him. He's trying to ruin your good things. He's trying to destroy us. I can't be with you and give you the life I want if you have somebody toxic like this in your life. And you have to choose between them and me. And you're like, oh, my God, but you're going to be my whole world. And Oh, I have to tell my brother I can't talk to him anymore. And they'll isolate you and they'll pull you away from any support that would ever go
Oh,
against
I
their
know people
power.
like that. I
And
know a
it's
few like that.
as soon as you start seeing them systematically removing anything that opposes their control, and they'll control by any means necessary, radicalism, you see the love bombing and all these things, anything to get anybody completely away from everyone else and just alone with them, then it turns into more of a vampiric situation, more parasitic. Then once you're alone, then it's like, and you just watch them just get the life sucked out of them. They start getting destroyed. There's a lot of deliberate misplaced criticism and things to start tearing them down as a person to make it so they can never leave. And then once you're finally broken down, all your legs are broken, arms are broken, back is broken, and everything's broken. Then they go, how the fuck could I ever have loved you anyways? You're a piece of shit. And they throw you in the garbage. And then they go and parasitically grab onto somebody new. They'll always have another one lined up. Another thing too is watch out for these people is they're bottom feeders and they'll hunt near the bottom. And so if you're ever in a low point, like, you lost your job or you just had a death in the family or something that knocked you down where like, oh, my heart's hurt or I'm going through a tough time, these people can smell you like blood in the water. Like if you're down, that's when they'll get you and they'll be like, I'll help build you up. I'll build you the best life. I'll be there. I understand your pain. And they'll be selling you the most beautiful thing in the world. But watch when they get you alone. Watch when they get someone alone and they'll really, really hate. As soon as they start losing control, you'll see radical behavior. As soon as you start going anything against their stories, it'll get insane. It'll go to levels you never knew existed to try to shame you or destroy you back into submission again. And they'll go all the way from hypersexual and connected in love all the way to just as extreme destruction as they can do. And you'll feel like you have no other way around it. Nothing I can do. I can't get out of here. Everything I've got is put into them. They're the center of my world. They're the center of everything. And I can't leave that because then I'll have nothing.
You're describing a few grifters who surrounded my stepfather in the last 3 or 4 years of his life. He died in 96. And he was low. My mother had died 36 or 37 years before. And he was lonely. The woman he liked really wasn't reciprocating very well. And they found him. It's like ants finding a picnic. And most of their goal, of course, was to separate him from his money. But in the same time, oh, Mr. Dashu, you're so wise. You're so beautiful. Work with me. I can really help you up. I want to make a movie and you're going to be in the movie, that kind of stuff.
The promise of grandeur.
People. Yeah. And I saw them and I was trying to separate them and keep them away.
And, you had to go. You had to go.
Well, he kept saying, oh, they're nice people. You don't understand them. And I said, I sure do understand them. They're evil. Get rid of them.
Yep. You can see through the mask. They had to get rid of you as fast as possible or else you'd mess up their control.
Oh, yeah.
This is usually how you can tell. The reality is most people that are hurting people are hurt people.
Oh, yeah.
That's most common. Because most people are just damaged and they don't know how to love. They hurt really bad. And so a lot of people are misdiagnosed as a dark triad trait, like narcissistic, psychopathy, or Machiavellian. There's a difference between being a hurt person, hurting somebody, like grieving. I don't know how to work through stuff, PTSD, bipolar disorder. You see people just not knowing how to love. Those are hurt people. Mm-hmm. That's a majority. There's a difference when I have absolute intent to do as much damage as I possibly can. Yeah. That's a very different thing. Something where I have zero empathy, zero connection, zero anything that makes me want to do good for you. I want to hurt you as much as I can. And that's in the single digit percentage. And so people are misdiagnosing very often. Most people are just hurt people. Pretty nasty stuff, but yeah, we've gotten to see these things. I catch them quick though. I pissed one off a couple weeks ago. I caught him. I was like, I know what you are. Within 2 minutes, they were already out of the room. They were like, nope. They hate me. Oh my God, do they hate me?
Yeah. Building a list of enemies that make you proud.
They don't like me. I see through the camouflage. They don't like
All
me.
Right.
But what are some things right now? Because you're in retirement. There's a lot of weird stuff going on right now. what are some things that if you could, I'm going to give you a genie wish here. I'm going to grant you a wish. I'm like, Tony, you get one wish. And like, what would you do if you had a wish right now? And hopefully not waste it and be like, I'm going to make the Chicago Bears win. Like, no, give me something that's like a good wish.
No, I'll make the Rams win. No, just kidding.
Oh, what would be a wish that you would have right now if I could just make this world a little better?
Well, because we've just had horrible fires in Los Angeles, I would take my house, which is not in a fire zone, but too close, and I would move it to a nice flat area, with about 300 feet of nothing around it. But beyond that, if I could have my one little wish, I don't know, more travel. If I wanted to be materialistic, get a Gulf Stream. Okay, darling, let's go to Bhutan this week. They're building a brand new digital city on the west side of the country. Let's go look. Okay, we've seen it now for 3 weeks. Let's go to the Seychelles, hang out. We do a lot of traveling, but obviously not like that.
Is it more like more quality time with your girl? That kind of thing in different places?
We have a lot of quality time. I mean, it's hard for me to give you a serious I want wish because, I'm pretty satisfied. About a third of my time is sitting on assignment. A third of my time is helping edit the Harvard University ALI Social Impact Review, which the Advanced Leadership Initiative puts out. And that's my, journalistic side, which I can still honor a little bit. And part of it is just, go to the gym, see my friends, read good books, try to do some creative writing.
Got it.
I don't know if I'm going to write another book, although I've thought about it.
Is there anything that you would wish for just, let's make this world better for others? Anything that you would wish for other people that you've seen a lot of bad stuff? And you're like, I'd like to get rid of that thing.
I'd like to get rid of social media.
Hey, listen, there's a lot of fights going on with that one.
I know. It's an invention that is really, done as much bad as good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when the telephone came in, people said the same thing because, people would make crank calls and you couldn't trace them back then.
Mm-hmm.
You'd call somebody and, say fuck you 27 times and hang up and nobody would know who it is.
That's true.
So people would call someone, oh my God, this is the factor your husband is dead. That would be done to make the person miserable.
Mm.
And this was done. Now with Call ID, you don't dare do that.
Now you have to make an anonymous post.
Yeah, you used to be able to do it from a payphone, but payphones are gone.
Yeah,
at least most of them. So maybe I would do that.
Get rid of social media.
I would certainly do something to limit population growth. Somehow,
I think population growth is already limiting itself at the moment.
I hope you're right.
We're in Universe 25. It's really funny that people think it's America. It's not. Yeah. It's not America for population growth. We're less than 5% of the world.
I know. It's India, China, Nigeria, places like that.
Very different thing. So that's a different thing altogether. It's a funny thing with the social media thing. I do a lot of writing when it comes to understanding the human exposure of power. Mm-hmm. And social media is no different than truth, which is the CIA knows, like the most power you can have is in secrets and in truth. Women know this too. That's why the way they use their reputation demolition systems to bully other women, they're very well aware that truth is a weapon that can be used for power. When you want to know who someone is, give them power. And so you're watching with social media. If people aren't trained to what to look for, I just did a post on this the other day about when you see somebody posting negatively or doing some sort of harm, you've seen the people in the car who'll be like, fuck you. Yeah, right. Like they're like a superhero because they know you can't get them. There's at least a mindset of like invincibility or lack of consequence. You want to see who someone is, give them power. And that's what I think you're seeing social media is you're actually just letting people expose who they really are because having no consequence and being able to say anything will show you who you are.
But social people don't realize when you're on social media, you are creating a record that lasts through eternity. Mm-hmm. It will last until the universe finally collapses back in on itself. It's not going anywhere. And if you do this at the age of 14, when you're looking for a job at the age of 23, somebody could go back and see that.
Yeah.
And it could hurt you. That when I was a kid, we could do all sorts of things at the age of 14, 15, 16, 17. I pulled more practical jokes on people than you know what to do with. Okay. And some of them weren't very nice, but nobody, when I was looking for a job, could go back and see them. Now they can. I remember one woman who was an extern for me from a law school, and she was very demure, very proper, did her work, seemed to be fine. My permanent law clerk one day comes in and says, "Judge, you got to see this." And he showed me a Facebook post of hers. She's wearing almost nothing. She's in a bar holding up a drink and showing off what actually was a very beautiful body, which I had no idea. She covered herself very well, but there she is. Now, it didn't bother me. I wasn't going to fire her over it, but a lot of law firms might and probably did.
It's interesting. Do you think that using social media that way, like, hey, I saw that who you really are is grounds for me to fire you for your job? What do you think?
Depends on the job. Depends on the job.
Hmm.
If you want to drive an Uber, no. If you want to work as a teller in a bank, I don't think so, unless you're stealing,
Right.
or whatever. On the other hand, if you're working in some area that where you could be compromised, for example, an analyst, CIA, the Directorate of Operations, where you're out, in the field, I think that's what they call it. You may not be very qualified for that post. If they've got stuff in the background that's going to embarrass you.
Or even like you're a judge. Imagine you got this social media of you just doing reckless ass, breaking the law stuff.
It could, depending on who the governor is, it could be disqualifying.
So yeah, it makes sense for certain things. It's really tricky. It's a tricky area because you just mentioned some jobs where like who would care, and then some jobs like that would matter.
Yeah, I think think of the presidents. Presidents appoint federal judges. What would George W. Bush do? A character allegedly counted for a lot in his administration. I don't know how he would have reacted. Obama was pretty straight and narrow too when you think about it. Donald Trump, we don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, it's so many things that, like, it's hard to say. And also, truth is such an interesting thing to change. I've done enough things like this where even just somebody could take this video, and they do it with Joe Rogan and stuff like that. They could take enough of this video and just make us say stuff that we didn't say.
Oh, no question.
That's an interesting game, too.
And this becomes an issue for evidence in court.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You change a photograph, you change the background, you change the voices, and then you put it in court. And here's what Rick said. Here's what Mohr said. And now you've got, no, I never said that. That's doctored. Well, go prove it.
There's a video. There's a video of you saying it. That's hard to disprove.
Yeah.
We're in interesting times. It's going to be really tricky. It's going to be very tricky. To be a judge today is going to be very, very difficult. It's going to get very tricky with the AI stuff and things happening. It's going to be very, very challenging to be able to discern the truth.
Can't tell you what's going to happen. We'll all wait and see.
Yeah. It's going to get weird, though. It seems pretty obvious it's going to get weird because you can't really defend against some of these things because it's done so well. It's hard to say that's not true.
But you'll be able to defend.
I
exactly.
So.
I don't know yet, but you'll be able to.
We'll see. It's going to be some tricky times. It's also like you said, it's not a perfect system. This is hard. These are tough topics, and I honor you for being able to have these conversations. These are hard topics.
Yeah.
They're difficult. Yeah, I'm a little concerned with what's going to happen with children and stuff like this. There's a lot of things we're watching. The domestic violence thing is a big thing. The drugs thing is also a big thing. There's a lot of misinformation stuff. Very hard to tell the difference these days. You have to stay unplugged to stay sane, it seems, which is also very difficult to do. Well, is there any message or anything that you would like to make sure, like I want people to really know that if you heard Anthony J. Mohr, if you heard what he could say, and there's one legacy thing you could leave in this world to say, guys, besides just try new things, what would be a thing you would leave for like the next generation to go, hey, guys, this is my years. I've done this. Do this thing. What would be a thing that you'd like to leave behind?
Be genuine.
Genuine.
Don't hide behind masculinity. Be yourself. Be genuine.
What does it mean?
Feelings, let them be shown.
What does it mean to hide behind masculinity, just in case somebody doesn't know what that means?
If you're acting macho all the time, You don't show the way you're feeling. One of the reasons I wrote the book was to show feelings, and I figured I could do that, on the page, actually better than in person. So I would say that don't be afraid to just kind of be honest and maybe tell your story and tell it. You all have a story. I don't care who you are.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story to tell. Maybe you're just going to tell it to the family, but tell it.
I like it. Speak heart side.
And as one author said, tell the truth, but tell it slant. That keeps it interesting.
Oh, add a little to it. Yeah. It's an interesting thing that you just said there. But tell it, like, don't hide behind macho or masculine. I'm working the men's field, and I'm going to try and set something straight heart side, because people are taught wrong heart side. And so since you said, let's talk heart side just a little bit. Whenever I work with people, men suppress humanity, suppress heart. We're taught to societally, don't cry, don't act weak, that kind of stuff. And so the bravado that sometimes has to be projected is obviously going to be fake. And don't overcompensate, try and be authentic. I'm with you on the genuine thing.
Yeah.
I want to help clear something up, and this is me being very direct on this. People are trying to teach that heart side for men is feminine. It is not. A man's heart side is not feminine. It's very masculine, very masculine. I can be proud of you, honor you, support you, encourage you, let you in deeply, protect you. I can do all of these big heart things, and not have to get in my feminine to do that. I can be very masculinely in love, and I'm very deeply in love with my girl. But that's not me in my feminine. That's me strongly in my masculine. And this is where people are using masculine to say it's toxic in some way. And I think people misunderstand that to love right for a man is in his strength. It's in his masculine, not in his feminine. That's where it's misunderstood. And being able to hear these dads' point of view, if you understand how that is to be able to build your people up and encourage them to grow, it sure is a different answer. Cool. All right, brother. You want to tell people to get your book?
Get the book. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at IndieBound. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. I have a website, www.anthonyjmohr.com. It's available there, or email me. I can get you a copy. It's on Kindle, hardcover, soft cover. I like the soft cover better than the hardcover. Kindle's good. Happy to sign it for you. If you ship it over to me, I'll ship it back gratis. And there you are.
There you go. Go check out the book, Every Other Weekend, Coming of Age with Two Different Dads by Anthony J. Mohr. Tony, it's been such a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Rick, thank you. It's been delightful. Be well.
You too.
Okay.
Click on the button and you can become the hero in your own story. It's time to start making the choices to change. And the evolution that you're going to do begins with choosing the next step. This is the way. And together, we're always stronger.